Right then, how's everyone doing? So, Strength Chat episode 16. We're going to talk about why should you actually strength train, okay? So originally, this was going to be my very first episode, but it's taken me about 15 weeks to grab hold of him. And we've got Kershaw. Before we get going, for those of you that don't know you, probably the people who listen to this probably will know who Chris is. Give me a little bit of background of who Chris is, Chris.
Who is Chris? I'm a personal trainer that started PTing people about 10 years ago. On my first day as a personal trainer, I went home crying because I promised everyone everything in the world, and I've been trying to catch up with myself ever since. About 5 years ago, I started to really get to where I wanted to be with personal training. I started training powerlifters, strongmen, and kind of more importantly, mentoring certain personal trainers as well. And from there, it's just been about refining my training strategies and my business and going from there.
So it's safe to say I'm going to big Chris up a little bit now. Obviously, when I first started working with Chris, and he's the guy that basically got me into strength training, got me into powerlifting, took me to my first powerlifting meet. You look at the guys and girls that he trains, a wide variety of people who want and are looking to get stronger. So the first question, basically, Chris, I want to ask you is, why do you think strength training is important? Why do you think it's important for Maureen, who's walked off the street, who just wants to be able to walk up the stairs without holding onto the banister, to Joe Bloggs, who's looking to get a PB in squat and that sort of stuff? Why is strength training so important? Why do we talk about it so much?
Well, I think strength training is important for people that just the average person, because the fact is that a lot of people are dangerously weak, and that has a number of problems with it. One, they're going to be far more fragile, they're going to get injured a lot easier, they're not going to be able to pick up the children as easily, they're not going to be able to move sofas as easily. It's something that's going to really affect people's lives if they're too weak. And I think one of the most important parts of it is the psychological aspect. If you're doing strength training, if you engage in that thing, just the fact that you can say, I am doing strength training, is such a psychological switch that's great to flick, because we'll edit this part out just because I'm thinking a little bit more. The fact that you can say that you're doing strength training makes you stronger. You can carry that into your everyday life. You can walk that little bit taller. And then when you're considering a strength athlete, if they're not training for strength, then they're not going to get the most from their training.
Yeah, I think it was it Mark Ripperto that said, so I can't remember what the quote was, might have been Dan John or Mark Ripperto, saying it's a lot more dangerous to be weak than it is to be strong, and strong people are harder to kill or something like that.
Yeah, I think there's a guy called James Fell that's a writer from Canada that talks about being antifragile, and I think strength training is one of the best ways to be anti-fragile. When you're talking about like crime and risk, particularly to women, if a woman's not strong, then she's far more at risk than if she wasn't strong. So I think particularly for women and maybe like scrawnier guys or people that aren't confident, the fact that they're doing strength training can be such a boost to their life that it's just such an incredible tool to use.
Okay.
And it can result in less pain with people, it can mean less depression. Studies are showing all the time that strength training has such a benefit psychologically that it just needs to be done by people.
Yeah, so that's why we had strength training and why strength training is such a big part. However, obviously, me and Chris have both competed in powerlifting, that's what we train for. So when we speak to people, they always say, oh, well, we're just going to do powerlifting or strongman training in our programs. If you're strength training, is it just you have to do powerlifting or strongman? Because obviously, what is strength training? Is it just powerlifting and strongman? Or like I say about Maureen coming in and walking off the street, or a powerlifter, obviously they're going to be specific to that. But exactly. What is it when you do strength training? Is it just them, or are there other avenues you can go down?
Definitely. I think I am a powerlifter and I do train strongmen, but most of the people that I do train are like Agnes or whoever, the general population.
We've just made them names up, by the way. They're not actually real people.
There's no one called Agnes in the world. So, most of the people that we train probably aren't going to be powerlifters. They're not going to be strongmen. They might engage in stuff that's influenced by those sports, but no, absolutely not. Strength training can be the difference between getting off the sofa and being homebound. It can be the difference between being able to go to the shops or go out on a day trip and not. If you can't get up and off the sofa, then you're not really going to be able to do anything with your life. So if you're particularly good at strength training, or you enjoy it, or you have a goal specific to those strength sports, then you can train in that, absolutely. But what we want to do is train people and strength train people for life rather than those specific sports. Just getting people stronger, I would say, has so many health benefits that people must do it. If you do particularly enjoy squats, bench presses and deadlifts, then absolutely go for the powerlifting part. But that's kind of the end stage, when you've done all the groundwork underneath, when you've laid those foundations, and that's our job, to build up those foundations, the tensile strength, we're building up your connective tissues, we're building up a foundation of muscle mass as well, and we're also building up a certain amount of movement competency. So once we've covered all of those bases, and you're either good at that or you really enjoy it, and you want to take that further, then you can talk about powerlifting prep, you can talk about doing a strongman competition or a strong woman competition, but that's much later down the line. So,
yeah, I think that from training powerlifters and strongmen, that's quite a small minority. That's like quite a small group. But when people first come in, I mean, when I first came in, I was just like, yeah, I'll do a little bit of this, do a little bit of that. And then Chris went, right, you're going to do a powerlifting competition. And that was after, from playing rugby, building that foundation to be like, right, actually, I want to gear towards powerlifting. But the majority of people that come in, it's just, I want to feel a little bit better, move a little bit better, and be able to carry all my shopping bags to the car in one go, which seems to be the main goal that people want to do.
Yeah, and it's to make people strong enough for life, and it's one of those things where if you can say, I have got stronger, it's an amazing thing. It makes people feel really good, and that's why we call it the end stage. That's what powerlifting and strong person is. It's right at the end of it. Like when you see someone up on the platform, you see just those 9 lifts, and you think, oh, that's absolutely brilliant, but I wouldn't want to necessarily do that. But what is really beneficial for people is all that preparation, all those lifestyle changes that they make, the consistency, the meal prep, the nutrition, the hydration, the feelings that training gives you. It's all those that are the most important rather than that end competition, unless that's what you do to make a living.
And as well, I think in terms of strength training, I like to think it's pretty relative. It's relative to that person.
Yeah.
So for someone who does who got their 100 kilo squat to, do you know what, actually I picked my son and my daughter up and my back didn't hurt.
Exactly.
As well as success is relative. I say this quite a lot to clients. It's not just because Chris can bench 150, me benching 122 and a half, which is my best, is like, that was important to me. So it's it's relative. It's not one size fits all when it comes to strength.
Absolutely. I had one of my clients, when I first was training her, she happened to be with another personal trainer at the time, and she was deadlifting a 12 kilo kettlebell, and I didn't know she was pretty much housebound at the time. She used to walk with a walking stick, and she's lifting up this 12 kilo kettlebell. So, oh wow, that's absolutely amazing. But I thought she could do a little bit more. So we decided that we were going to set a goal of deadlifting a 40 kilo kettlebell. Now, to some people, they could pick that up, throw it over their head, and it not really be a big deal whatsoever. So what? It's just 40 kilos. That's not very much. But to her, that was a massive deal. And it turns out that after 2 weeks we deadlifted that 40 kilo kettlebell and she was just fine. And then a few months later she said that after we did that I went home and I put my walking stick into the cupboard, and I haven't used it since. I can now go out on public transport by myself, I can go out on day trips, I can get all these things that I never knew was possible, and that was just because we got her to lift a 40 kilo kettlebell. And since then she's done all kinds of different competitions because she built those foundations and then felt the want to do something more specific like a competition when she was ready for it. And I think she's addicted now because I can't stop her.
Yeah, comes back to that mindset as well. You know, it's like breaking down those barriers. If you've done that, right, what's the next step?
Absolutely.
So we've spoken about obviously the training side of things, why you should strength train and that sort of stuff. But for obviously we've said that powerlifting strongman is the end product. Mm-hmm. For people who are a little bit unsure about what training they should do, but they actually do want to get stronger, how would you go about adding strength training into a program? So, like your client, deadlifting that 12 kettlebell, deadlifting to the 40. How would you go about just starting laying the foundations for a program for strength training?
Well, I like to start with movement competency. So you get someone really confident with a particular movement. You make sure that that movement doesn't make their back pull every time that they do it. You make sure they can get into good positions so they can replicate it when the coach isn't looking. So with the lady that I was talking about, because it was her beginning stages of strength training, we decided just to go with progressive overload. So the next week we decided that we were going to deadlift a 16 kilo kettlebell, then a 20, then a 24, then a 28, then a 32, then a 36. And because it was the first time she did that, she responded very fast to it. And you'll find that quite a lot when people first start strength training, and it's not because they're building more muscle. It's because the nervous system is effectively getting better at using the resources that it's got. It becomes more efficient, it's got better firing patterns, everything like that. So when people are first doing strength training, I like to pick very simple exercises like a kettlebell deadlift, like a goblet box squat or a goblet squat, or it could even be leg press or hack squat. It just depends on someone's individual movement competency. So start really simple, see how long you can just go heavier each week until things start to break down, and then once things start to break down or there's any plateaus hit, then you can start to weigh into more details like different kinds of periodization or different kinds of specific plan. But the most important thing is just to keep it really simple and then build from there.
Okay, so I think you've just said the last question that I was going to ask.
So I'll come up with something else.
So yeah, I think I always like to, when you're starting off and getting people into strength training and getting people stronger, putting more muscle on, all that sort of stuff, is it's like programming a computer. You're programming your body to get stronger. What I really liked, and it was pointed out in a powerlifting seminar that I went with the strength athlete on the other day, that strength is a skill, so practice makes perfect. So don't worry about going and doing a back squat straight away. Like Chris says, pick your starting point. That's why your trainer or your coach should be assessing you and be like, right, okay, so maybe we're not really ready to have a barbell on your back. Maybe we can have a barbell on your front, like a front squat, or you can do a goblet squat, or whatever it may be. Okay. So we've covered obviously why. You don't just have to do powerlifting and strongman. That's the end product. And how to start adding strength training into your program. What is the take-home message that you want people to take away from this?
Just start strength training, and then to build on that, keep it as simple as possible at first. And where you're unsure, or if you are just starting and you want to know that you're doing it correctly, get a coach. A coach is going to be that second pair of eyes. They're going to have the expertise to make sure that you're doing it correctly, to make sure that you're not going to hurt yourself, and to make sure that you feel perfectly confident doing the things that you're going to be doing in the gym, to make sure that you know how to walk up to a squat rack and set it up, to make sure you know what a barbell is, what a kettlebell is, and just to start the whole building of that foundation without you learning bad habits, doing particular movements that might be dangerous for you or anything like that. So if I could tell you anything, the best way to start is to get a coach.
Spot on. So I really enjoyed this chat. I always like catching up with Chris. Hopefully we'll get a few more planned in the next couple of weeks or later down the line. If you've got any questions about this topic, or you want to get involved in some strength training, obviously you can message me, comment on in the comments below, drop me a message. I'll be tagging Chris's page and Instagram in this as well. Put your maybe email down as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So either drop me or Chris a message. The whole point is we aren't bothered, you know, who you chat to, as long as it's like, look, I'm going to take the first steps to giving it a go, giving strength training a go. Yeah. So thanks very much, and I'll see you next week.
Cheers, Steve.